Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so the 2026 global wheat market is gearing up to be one of the most volatile environments we've seen in a generation. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how B2B traders can take all this chaos and turn it into a massive competitive advantage. If you're moving bulk commodities across borders right now, you already know the reality on the ground. The market has entered a radically different phase. The old playbooks are literally burning, and your margins for error, they're shrinking by the minute.
The wheat market doesn't just fluctuate. It reveals who prepared and who reacted. I absolutely love this insight. It comes directly from over 2 decades of experience in the field, and honestly, it's the foundation of everything we're discussing today. Market shifts aren't just some distant noise happening on a trading floor far away. They directly and sometimes violently impact your sourcing costs, your daily contract margins, and ultimately, whether or not your business is positioned to survive the next decade. Preparation is what separates the winners from the folks who just lose their margins.
All right, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the global wheat shock, core market drivers, regional trader impact, Middle East perspectives, volatile market strategies, and finally, tech for success. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The global wheat shock. Geopolitical demand meets supply constraints.
Right now, we are seeing these massive dual macro forces literally colliding in real time to squeeze the global market. On one hand, you've got massive Chinese commitments for U.S. farm products, and that's pulling demand aggressively upward as they prioritize long-term food security. But on the exact opposite side, we're seeing severe, prolonged droughts in key states like Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado, which are absolutely crushing the winter wheat supply. We're talking about some of the lowest output in decades for U.S. winter wheat. This specific tug-of-war is fundamentally breaking historical pricing models. A huge global buyer is actively securing grain while the constrained supplies are just drying up. If you're relying on cozy 5-year pricing averages right now, yeah, you're flying completely blind.
Moving on to Section 2, Core Market Drivers. These are the 2026/27 fundamentals you absolutely have to watch. Get this. Global wheat production is projected to contract by a staggering 24.8 million metric tons. And that contraction creates an immediate domino effect. Production forecasts have been slashed across the board for the European Union, Australia, Canada, and Argentina. Because these traditional heavy-hitting exporters are faltering, buyers in the Middle East and North Africa are being forced to pivot hard toward Russian output. And here's a wild fact about the scale of that pivot. At a projected 47 million tons, Russian wheat isn't just some convenient backup option anymore. It essentially dictates the global export floor single-handedly.
But here's the kicker. Even with supply dropping, global consumption refuses to retreat. It is holding relentlessly steady at over 823 million metric tons. Why? Well, populations across the Middle East, North Africa, and Southeast Asia are growing rapidly, and regional diets are shifting toward more wheat-based products. Add to that the heavy structural demand for feed-quality wheat. When alternative grains face their own climate constraints, you still have massive livestock populations that need feeding. That baseline security requirement puts an absolutely rigid floor under global prices. The demand simply isn't blinking.
So, what about world-ending stocks? You know, the global shock absorber we normally rely on. They're thinning down to roughly 275 million metric tons. But wait, here is an absolutely crucial insight. That number is effectively an illusion. Once you take China's massive, hoarded, and completely unavailable state reserves out of the equation, the actual stocks-to-use ratio for international traders is razor-thin. This structural deficit means the market has literally no cushion. Any new weather anomaly in the Black Sea or even a minor geopolitical hiccup is going to cause sharper, faster price spikes than anything we've dealt with in the last 10 years.
Section 3, Impact on Regional Traders. Let's look at the squeeze on MENA and GCC margins.
Let's talk about the math that's probably keeping you up at night. CIF volatility. Imagine this. Your free onboard price at origin jumps 10% on a Tuesday because of a weather scare, and unpredictable ocean freight spikes the very same day. By the time that vessel actually arrives, your cost, insurance, and freight valuation hasn't just crept up a bit, it has mathematically multiplied your customs duties and your tax exposure. That compound effect can instantly wipe out a perfectly projected margin before the ship even drops its anchor. And because those total transaction values are skyrocketing, getting letters of credit issued by your bank becomes significantly tighter and much more expensive to maintain.
So how do you survive this? Well, savvy buyers in the Middle East are getting seriously creative with geography. They're actively mapping out Overland Economic Cooperation Organization, or ECO, transit corridors. We're talking about aggressively routing Russian and Central Asian wheat overland through Turkey, Iran, and the Caspian corridor.
Bypassing the Red Sea or the Suez Canal entirely isn't just a clever trick to shave a few bucks off freight anymore. It's a massive, strictly necessary risk mitigation strategy to avoid traditional maritime choke points that can completely paralyze your supply chain.
Section 4, Regional Perspectives. We're mapping out the Middle East market.
Because listen, local context is absolutely everything here. Take the GCC, for example. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 initiatives are driving consistent, massive volume. But if you don't have absolute mastery over local compliance systems like Sabre and FASA, your cargo is going to sit rotting in port while demurrage fees pile up to the sky. It is a devastating trap for the unprepared. Or look at Iraq. The reconstruction boom there creates incredible, steady demand for bulk grains, but you have to expertly navigate notorious security considerations and massive logistical bottlenecks at ports like Qasr and Basra. And then you have these agile, relationship-driven markets like Oman and Qatar that really reward speed and flexibility. Mastering this localized documentation is quite literally as vital as nailing your global pricing.
Section 5, Volatile Market Strategies. Here are the tactics you need for extreme price swings.
To survive these extreme swings, your operation has to shift from being reactive to being relentlessly resilient. It's an entire cohesive ecosystem. You can't truly master basis trading if you haven't first diversified your supplier network to avoid being held hostage by a single origin. Once you're diversified, you've got to optimize your freight aggressively, because logistics dictate who wins the contract. From there, you focus on value-add niches to isolate your margins from pure commodity price speculation. And finally, you tie the whole shebang together by leveraging technology.
Executing all this, it requires surgical precision. First, negotiate origin optionality in your forward contracts, but you have to know the exact quality specifications, whether you're dealing with strict GHOST standards for Black Sea wheat or rigorous ASTM requirements. Second, stop taking flat price risks. Seriously, if you aren't integrating basis pricing tied to macroeconomic indices like CBOT in Chicago or MATIF in Paris, you are leaving your margins entirely to chance. Third, optimize your freight inch by inch using advanced 3D container loading software where every single cubic centimeter counts. And fourth, step out of the commodity bloodbath by formulating custom organic or specialized feed blends for regional food security programs.
Which brings us to Section 6, Tech for Long-Term Success. This is your digital edge in grain trading.
Honestly, trying to do all of this manually in 2026 is pretty much impossible. The data points clearly to unified platforms like Tendify as the definitive solution to eliminate disjointed spreadsheets and human error. Just imagine having real-time cost calculators, instant HS code compliance, automated contracts, and logistics tracking all living inside one single command center. Think about the visceral advantage of capturing a fleeting, 2-hour arbitrage window and beating a competitor to a quote by 30 seconds, simply because your landed CIF price, your compliance, and your freight were all calculated automatically. Now that is a real digital edge.
So the market isn't broken, folks. It's just evolving. 2026 is going to ruthlessly reward the proactive. Successful traders treat these dynamic shifts as the new normal. They build diversified networks, they optimize their logistics, and they turn data into decisions faster than anyone else out there. So I'll leave you with this one final question. Are your systems truly ready to turn these global shocks into your biggest competitive advantage?